Hello there, friends, and welcome to a very serious conversation on Halloween of 2025. Don't even know why I started it like that. I don't plan my beginnings of my videos, so I just kind of say whatever. Sometimes it's kind of dumb. That's cool. I'm okay with that. I gotta say, one of the things I've always done is just left shit in because I don't know, it's part of my own personal humility test, to be like, do I really need to edit out videos when I say something dumb or misspeak? No, I can correct myself. And I guess maybe I grew up in an era where just being wrong was okay. Apologizing was okay, you know. Saying agreeing to disagree was okay. Society was about many different people with many different ideas just saying, let's do the best we can. And I feel like we are still that same society. In other words, I don't think people have changed as much as folks think we have. Now, I wouldn't say that the current generations aren't different than our generation, but in many ways they're just the same. But for anybody from Gen X or back, let's say, those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s, the Game Boys and the Ataris, okay, it seems like kind of a nostalgia now, and it's kind of an eye roll from the current generations. Oh, yeah, you guys were back there in the good old days. And it's funny because when I was growing up, I remember hearing the same thing from the people who grew up during the 60s and 70s. Oh, you guys missed out on the good years, you know. We had the best stereo systems and the best music. And I was always like, yeah, you did. You suck. But I listened to all that 60s and 70s stuff because I loved the meaning behind it and the strength behind the good music and just kind of the attitude of the hippie movement. And then the 80s turned into the 90s, and the early 90s were fine. And then it just kind of turned into this bland 2000s bullshit. Then it went to 2010s. And I'm not saying it's the kids or the generations, it's just they weren't given the same. Because my son and I were talking about this. We went on a walk today down to this waterfall, and he was talking about how things, he's like, were things better when you and mom were, younger or growing up? I was like, I didn't want to say yes because that's just kind of, bias. But I was like, of course it was. It was better because people all felt like we were different but on the same page. There was a lot of opportunity and potential. We felt like the future had a lot of amazing things in store. Sure, we're watching hoverboards thinking, yeah. But no, I never even at that time thought a hoverboard would work because I understood that once it went upside down, skater would be, I won't even go there. But I didn't expect flying cars either because I'm a thinking person. I'm always going over shit in my head like, would this work? And I'm picturing different flyways and levels and different ways they could do it, and how there'd always be that one asshole who would ruin it, or else they'd have to like regulate it so you couldn't even drive your own vehicle. But let's just say there was the potential for a mass transit future with smaller cities, people kind of self-governing, making shit work, right? Never thought that would happen, but I always dreamed of it. Here we are, 2025, and it's kind of if you look at the way that the world is defined online, for example, if you spend your time online surfing the internet, sorry, that's a 98 term, isn't it? Surfing the web. I wouldn't even say you're surfing the web because there was a time when you could do that. It was the Wild West, okay? Now it's more like, what is it? Dipping into the swamp, I guess, because so much of it is nonsense. So much of it is bullshit. So many lies up until a couple of years ago when now the AI took over and it's even double lies. I want to do a whole video about this podcast I was listening to. This guy was talking about, he wrote a book, him and this other guy, about some terrorist network within the government or the CIA. But the whole podcast was him being interviewed about how when the book came out, they went on Amazon and they counted 47 different books that were very, quote, similar, that used, even one of them even used an author's name that was similar, or said that it was inspired by this guy's book, even though it hadn't come out, right? Basically, these guys now are taking AI, having it write a book for them based on a title of a book that's coming out soon by somebody that's not even out yet. So when it comes out, they're both out at the same time. Honestly, it wouldn't even matter. You could wait till the book comes out, then just buy a copy, run AI on it. I mean, it's just, but the thing is, AI can't be run like in live time like that on the book. So what they're doing is just taking basically some similar ideas and putting them in a book. And they're stealing people's authorship, they're stealing people's artwork, they're stealing people's music. And this sounds extreme, but to bring AI into this, it's why a lot of younger people are kind of losing hope and just like, why should I create anything fucking awesome when it can just be replicated in, a split second by a computer? And meanwhile, a lot of people are talking about the AI bubble and how, of course, they've put like hundreds of billions in, but they're only getting 50 billion back. It doesn't matter. The numbers don't matter. The fact is that it exists. And yeah, these data centers that they're building just to run their high-powered AI. So, I guess they can get people to subscribe so they can write shitty books and make shitty art and pretend like it's real. That makes people kind of lose hope. The creative side. If you're all business and you don't care about creativity, that's fine. You're not. But let's just say that your side's going to lose out too. You can't be predicting markets anymore. You can't be solving equations. It doesn't matter. We've got AI to do that, right? And it's not just about it stealing jobs. It's about just the hopelessness people have when they feel like what they do doesn't matter because it's dominated by something else. Why write a book when it can just be copied, right? I don't know. I still create. Look, I started this video thinking about this, and I was actually up there just being my creative self. I try to be as creative as I can. I've got a bunch of camera parts, and I'm just like, how do I put these together to make something interesting or neat, to not waste anything? And then I started thinking about all the stuff I have, my cameras, my speakers, and lenses everywhere. And I was like, old dead formats. I've got 8 tracks and, 8 film reels from I've got like these original Popeye film and a bunch of weird shit I've shared in the past. But what do you do with all this stuff? You kind of feel guilty about it. Like, I should sell it, get to business. And I'm like, no, it's some of the last real fucking media out there, Everything's just rent to own and instant gratification now. These little fucking screens that we're staring at all the time. What can I say? What can I say about it? Without sounding like the old man screaming at clouds. I just don't know anymore. I really don't. But I guess that brings me to my point, which is that I don't have a point. When I started this video, I didn't even know what I was going to talk about. And honestly, I forgot what I even talked about at the beginning of this video. Maybe I was telling you the story about my son and I going down to the waterfall and enjoying a moment where my son was telling me, that his generation is kind of like, he's 16, they're in a totally different world than we were at that time. But at the same time, like I said, things don't change that much generationally, as much as we'd like to think they do. It's just that new music, new ideas come out. What has changed isn't the creativity in individuals. It's the fact that we've allowed too much plastic bullshit to creep into our lives. And I say that with a strong emphasis on the plastic part, not metaphorically, but literally and metaphorically. I had hoped that when I was younger, the new generations would see through consumerism. And so many people have. So many younger people are moving away from that idea of keeping up with the Joneses and buying the latest car, the latest iPhone. But still, you see so many young people out there buying shit, being part of consumer culture, just to be seen with stuff. And then you've got the Andrew Tates out there. That just the disgusting human beings that, you know, talk about women like shit and talk about poor people like shit and just basically like, if you ain't hustling, you ain't a man. Like I have no interest in listening to any of those people. These are the guys who have a very limited lifespan when it comes to their love of themselves, let's say. I knew plenty of guys. I worked for a dude who, him and my friend's brother, who was his friend, they're both weightlifters, you know, so they always would kind of look down on everybody else and all of us working and yeah, crack jokes about the crew. And I saw them 10 years later and they're just these flabby losers. And, you know, one of the guys ended up just overdosing in Cali. And it was so sad because he was my old boss. He was the guy who just treated us all like shit, you know, but acted superior because, you know, he was strong for the moment. And this is just kind of a metaphor for the larger thing, you know. People have power for a moment, right? Or they have a bunch of money for the moment. But eventually that fades. And you're stripped down to nothing but yourself, baby. I'm going to say, like, one of my favorite things to not a metaphor, it's I guess a thought experiment is like, when people are like, how would I handle losing what I have? And when I say losing what I have, I mean fucking losing it all. Like, the way I've described it is, what if you woke up one morning, and this sounds cruel, but follow me to the end. It sounds crude, but it's something that everybody should think through. If you've ever considered memento mori, you will die, you have to consider this. If you woke up in the morning and you were laying in the middle of the street and you opened your eyes and it was raining, you were bare-ass naked, you had nothing. In my mind, I always picture neighbors standing around and everything, but like you're coming to and you realize that your whole family has just burned in the house fire, let's say if you have a family. Or even if you don't, let's say whatever you had, your car, whatever it was lost. It's a horrible thought, I know, but follow me. And then you find out that every single thing you ever owned, every piece of who you were, you know, financially and physically is gone, right? Everything, it's all gone. And you can't just have some secret bank account somewhere where you can just restart, even if you're a single guy and you lost everything. No, you have nothing. And not only that, but you have no connections. This is important because a lot of people know people. I'm like, oh, I'd get back on my feet quick. No, you're a guy who wakes up in the street, you've lost everything, and you know nobody. How would you fare? And as extreme as that sounds, if you put yourself in that situation, you can say, fuck, I'd be screwed, you know, or else maybe you could say, I've mentally prepared myself enough to know that while I would cry, I would panic, I would be fearful, I would have moments of doubt, I would never ever lose complete hope, and I would be able to get back on my feet one way or another. And that's not being, you know, it's a horrible thought. Even bringing up the family thing, I realize how that sounds. Like, oh, how would you do if you burned if your family burned? No, it's not about that. It's about understanding that the things that we have, we need to be extremely fucking grateful for. My family is everything. I would give my life for my family, and I would take another life to protect my family. Like, those are just things I've already asked myself. Like, if you have a family, you probably asked yourself that too. And I know people who are like, oh, I don't know what I'd do. That's not an acceptable answer. Like, if somebody broke into your house, what would you do to them? You know, I don't think they would make it very far, and I would hopefully finish them. And I would have no problem doing it because I've rehearsed this in my head. Okay? This is about protecting those you love and protecting your family and friends, but also realizing that those attachments can be taken away right away. Anybody you know, anybody you love. When I lost my mom a couple of years ago, it was pretty sudden. She coincidentally, like, had always been, she got really into the conspiracy YouTube and was denying that COVID was anything. We agreed on some things, but let's just say in the end, she thinks she got COVID a couple of years later. And then she all of a sudden like fell getting out of the shower. It was pretty brutal. I don't know the story because I was called later. They found her. She lived alone. And it was traumatic, right? It was losing my mom. I lost my dad when I was like 15 or 16, and 15, I think. And it was a few days before school started, and it was horrible. But I've tried to be tough since then, saying if you lose your dad when you're a teenager, you're pretty much fucked mentally. Like, I hadn't realized what that would do to me until many years down the line and decades. Within the last decade, it's really realized a lot of my own mental illnesses, if you will. I don't like that term. It's more like mental issues to work out, kinks. We all have them, and many are just in complete denial. There are folks out there who don't want to know themselves or understand themselves, understand the world, and it's unfortunate that that's the fact. But looks like my phone says I'm running out of time. That's okay. I'm about done here. It's good to run out of time. Puts me on a limit, on a leash. After all, it is Halloween. My wife will probably be rolling up soon. She's dropping off my other son at his friend's house, and then I'm going to go down and watch Halloween movies, creepy Halloween movies, with my wife and my son. So, my other son is calling right now. So, with that, I'll leave you. Much love. Peace out, and I'll talk to you soon.